Hello.
I'm so excited. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. I think as we getting everyone to join in, I was keen to let everyone know that this is a first lunch and learn session. So make yourself comfortable, grab your lunch, grab a drink, grab whatever it is that you need. My name is Anaïs. I'm a career coach. My passion is to empower women to build a career they're happy with. And I'm joined today by the amazing Lauren. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat about this today.
Me too. This is very, very exciting. So I think maybe as we give a few more seconds for people to join in, would that be okay to share a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I work as a visibility and impact consultant for women and businesses. And basically, my purpose is driven in a very similar way as yours. I want there to be more women taking up more seats at tables where big decisions are made, basically. And I think the world as it is now, it's a time where that is much more important than I think it has ever been. And the key things that I focus on are really about how you can strategically build your visibility and how you can have more impact. I'm also a coach and I work a lot with kind of mindset and subconscious programming and that kind of thing. So it's not just about the kind of strategic, practical ways of building this. It's also about what do you actually need underneath to really support you through that. So that's what I do now. In a previous life, I've worked predominantly in kind of strategic marketing roles. I'm an ex-Amazon head of marketing. I worked at a couple of other large businesses, small tech companies. So a lot of experience working in quite male-dominated spaces, which is where a lot of my kind of passion comes from, because I think we need there to be more women in these spaces. And in order to get more women in these spaces, we need more women to be progressing, the ones that are already there. So how can we kind of do that? And how can we sort of navigate those environments in ways that help us most effectively, without necessarily having to wait for change? So I'm a big believer in the need for change, and I think it's absolutely essential. But I'm also pragmatic about the fact that women who are of my generation and a little bit older and a bit more senior might not necessarily experience the benefits of that change quickly enough. So what do they need from a practical perspective in order to actually progress, in order to kind of navigate those environments, whilst also still being authentic and not having to become somebody else?
And that's exactly what I think we can definitely dive into. I 100% resonate. I think hearing your story, and we see in terms of like the work that I do, it's just so empowering to hear a little bit more about how your messaging is, which, as you said, I think a lot of women unfortunately don't see the change coming as quick as it should be. So again, this is what today is about. And I think like a good place for us to start would be to hear more from you. Why do you think it's important to be seen and visible in the workplace?
So I think one of the things when we talk about being visible is, I think firstly, like, I want to be clear on like kind of what I mean by visible, because I think sometimes we tend to see it as I need to be loud and I need to be like physically seen and physically present in all of these different environments. And it's not necessarily about that, because that doesn't work for everybody, right? So what does being visible mean for you? And it can be a different thing. For me, more visibility is around how can you ensure that you are being seen in a way that works for you by the people that are important to see you, and for doing the things that are important for you. So how can you ensure that if you have got an ambition or a goal of getting to a certain level in your career or to achieving a certain milestone, who are the important people that actually need to see you succeeding where you are now and in the future in order to help you get there? Because we're not operating in, we're very rarely are we operating in our own isolated bubble. So there are people around us that we need to ensure, whether it's that we're influencing in the right way, whether it's that we're getting the right level of support, whether we've got the right level of understanding. And for me, it also comes down to, so that's the people, but it's also like, are they seeing you for the right things? And this is also something that I think is really important and can sometimes be hard for, it can be hard for some women, and just because of the way that we're conditioned and socialized, this kind of stuff. But if there is something that you want to be doing that you are good at, how can you ensure that people are seeing that, rather than necessarily focusing on something that maybe you're good at simply because it's just a thing that you do, but it's not necessarily something that drives you forward. So how do you start making those distinctions and really kind of having a bit of a laser focus on the ones that are really important for you? And then also there's kind of layers for me around just how do you create influence with people? How do you deliver impact? How do you use your emotional intelligence to work really well with others and all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think like so many things from what you said, but let's unpack the whole visibility and be seen by the right people. Because I mean, I'm curious to have your views on that. But from my perspective, there are almost like two things. It's like, obviously, making sure that the right people see you for the right things, right? And for who you truly are. But it's also making sure that the impact or the work that you're delivering or whatever it is seen as well, and sometimes the two goes together, but sometimes they're a little bit independent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a thing that comes up a lot with lots and lots of women that I speak to, is this resistance, in whatever way that resistance comes up, to highlighting things that you're doing well and things that you're achieving. And there is sometimes this feeling of, well, I'm doing it really well, people should just see it. People should just notice. And that isn't, unfortunately, most of the time, that's not really how things work. And so that's a big part of it for me, is like, you know what, if you want to get to like up here and you're doing the right work to get there, make sure that you're highlighting that, make sure that you're telling that story in the right way. Because if what people notice is the stuff that isn't important, it's not going to help you to create that path. So you have to be responsible for like shining, you want to be directing that spotlight into the right places so that the right people can see it,
Yeah. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, all good.
Yeah, I definitely want to go there, in terms of, okay, how do you make that spotlight and make sure that you shine the through light on that? But before I go there, just to go back to what you were saying, I do have the experience as well with some of my clients, because they're like, yeah, but I'm doing such a great work. Like, it should be seen for what it is. And I feel like, I mean, so many variables probably come into play when it comes to that. But I feel like probably the conditioning with school, when you're doing a great work, considering the length of school, which is debatable, but anyway, you've got your A and that's it. You've done a great work. Here we go. And I feel like some women put themselves into that position as well, in the sense of the recognition will come from like the recognition of seeing the work that I do. But I think there is, unfortunately, and this is exactly what this conversation is also about, an extra layer that needs to be put on top, an extra effort almost, but also an extra push to get this work visible.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think, the socialization of women into hiding the light, essentially, and avoiding drawing attention to our strengths, and the way that we are judged differently to men. It doesn't mean that men aren't judged, but we are judged differently, and there are a huge number of factors that go into it. The way that boys and girls are treated at school when they get things right is different. So for girls, there is a higher bar generally of expectation, and so when they meet that bar, they've met the bar. For boys, academically, the bar tends to be different, and so boys are praised differently. But there's also the bigger layer for me is actually how we socialize boys and girls to talk about their achievements and their strengths from a very young age, because it is typically seen as something that is, I use the kind of phrase like not ladylike, which is a little bit old school, but actually that is sometimes what we're really ingraining, is like, oh, that's not really a thing that we're supposed to do. It's not very nice to do that. Like, what are other people going to think of you? Are people going to think that you're boasting or you're bragging? That's the biggest fear that women I speak to deal with, is like this fear of, I'm going to be seen as bragging about my skills.
Yeah,
and that's
arrogant or cocky.
Exactly. 100%. And there's a world of difference between saying, I achieved this thing, and saying, I've achieved loads of things and I'm the most amazing person in the world. Like, they're so different, but we still have this feeling of like, if a woman says, yes, I've achieved this, there's this resistance to it. So
True.
There's obviously a lot that needs to be unpacked on lots of different layers around kind of making progress in that space. But
yeah,
I'm kind of a believer in, if we can see more women doing it, we start to normalize it a little bit more.
Agreed.
Because it does hold us back, you know, and it's, again, there are a huge number of factors that are in the way. This is by no means is this the only thing, and by no means is this solely the responsibility of women. And, you know, it's not a thing that women have to, you know, I'm not a believer in like, yeah, it's women's jobs to kind of fix themselves, because that's absolutely not the case at all. Yeah. At the same time, it is something that women find harder to do than men. And actually, it's something that I think we could do with a little bit more, because like we deserve to be, like, if you're working really hard and you're achieving great stuff, you deserve to be able to say, yeah, I did that actually, and I'm really proud of that. Yeah. And to also have other people recognize you for that work too. And again, if you're being recognized for something, it doesn't mean that you're saying, I did it all on my own and no one else did anything.
It's interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, two things. First of all, for anyone who's listening in, and I'm looking at you right now, you can be humble and talk about your accomplishments. Like, those two are not necessarily dividing 100%. Each other. They can actually be very compatible. That's one thing. Or you can talk about your accomplishments and still be aligned with your values. One of your values may be being grateful or humble, or one of those, right? So that's one thing. Based on what you said, I think it was very, very interesting. And the second thing is interesting. You mentioned that literally a few seconds ago before going here with you. A colleague of mine who I used to work with has been recognized. She received an award as I think it was an inspiring leader or experienced leader as part of procurement awards. And her post, exactly like you said, she talked about it. Obviously, she was grateful to the association who gave her the award, but also to the other people who were involved. And she literally was grateful to the entire team, including myself. And I haven't worked with her. Her name is Judy Neal for like 3 years now. And I think this is exactly the kind of things we need to do more of, you know, having the opportunity and stepping up to recognize our achievements, but in a way that is actually, as you said, aligned with us, and therefore potentially also recognize the team or the allyship that we had along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it is that, you know, there's always that qualification that women have when talking about something like that. And, you know, it will be, oh, well, I didn't do it. I mean, it wasn't just me, like it was all of us, like we were all there and I was there and I was part of it, but like loads of other people did loads of other work as well as the work that I did. Or, you know, if you say, what are your strengths? And you say, actually, I'm really good at strategy, but I'm really, really bad at Excel spreadsheets. You know, there's always this kind of, there's always this need to qualify. And it's because we don't really allow women to say those things. And quite often we don't feel comfortable with it, you know, and the boasting and bragging thing is one that I come up against quite a lot as a, well, yes, but bragging is bad. It's like, but nobody here is talking about bragging. Nobody here is talking about being arrogant. We're not talking about overselling ourselves. You know, I mean, just having the level of confidence of an averagely confident man is for many women a significant shift up. You know, you're not even getting into states of like overcompensating or exaggerating wildly. Like it's nowhere even close to that. But it's the immediate fear that people have is like, oh no, but don't be arrogant, because that's a terrible thing as a woman, a terrible thing for women to take up that kind of space.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. It's almost like, you know, there is a binary approach. You know, it's either you are in where you are right now, which is, you know, your comfort zone, you do a great work and you're expecting to be recognized, or, you know, you're expecting that things are going to come based on exactly where you are, but not necessarily shouting out too much about what's happening. Because if you do, you're on the opposite of the spectrum, which is you're going to be arrogant. And I feel like the spectrum is actually very, very wide. And there are so many variables that you can just tackle on the spectrum. I mean, you can't see my hand anymore, but you know what I mean? It's over there.
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Conscious of time, obviously time flies with these things. Let's talk a little bit more about your tips. Now that we know a little bit more about it, now that we know potentially the problems around this, I think I would love to hear your thoughts as to any practical tips from your experience, from your expertise that you can share to anyone to actually be more seen and visible in the workplace.
So, I mean, I always like to start with getting really clear on why it's important for you, because it will be important for you in different ways that's important for me. So what is the thing, what is the thing that you want to drive towards, whether that's your purpose, whether that's a goal, whether that's a 5-year plan, whatever you want to call it. So just get really, really clear on what that is and why you want to get there. Like, what's it going to mean for you? Because if we don't have something that we're kind of anchoring this to, that's sort of a bigger, more exciting thing, we can feel a little bit lost in it in the day to day. So just kind of get that, so that's something that feels like really, really centered for you. And then the other thing I really encourage women to do is think about what it means for you and what ways are you comfortable with it. So, and a lot of this really comes down to kind of how you can be authentic and how you can really be yourself, because the more you can be yourself with this stuff, the easier it will be. So, are you somebody who really likes to communicate effectively using the written word? Are you somebody who likes to do presentations that are quite structured and rehearsed and prepared? Are you somebody who is more comfortable in casual conversations? Like, where are the places and the areas where you feel your best? And whether that's with certain groups of people, whether that's certain environments, that kind of thing. Because what we want to do is we want to make more of those. So how can you then start taking aspects of that into other scenarios? So
just to stop you there before you go into another one, because this one is priceless. A lot of the clients I work with, or even conversations I'm having, a lot of particularly women, I know it's obviously, we don't want to do stereotypes there, but obviously because it's the core purpose of our conversation, I want to talk particularly about that. They just have trouble to identify the strength and what they're good at. So even that very first step you're describing is a hard thing. It's like, well, I just don't know. That's the reason why I'm watching this live, for example, or what's behind it. So do you have any tips to help them come to those, to the identification of those things they can put in place?
So in terms of identifying your strengths, I think this is something that if your immediate answer to the question is, oh, I don't know what they are, this says to me, you need to spend a little bit of time on this. And so it's not something to just dash off in 20 minutes. Yeah. It's something to kind of really sit with. And I mean, if you can't literally think of any, you can just start by thinking outside of work as a starting point. So like, what are the things that I'm really good at that are not work related? Because that can sometimes be like the pressure. It can also be really good to start thinking about things that you really enjoy, because that actually can lead you to a strength. And it's sometimes easier to say, oh, do you know what? I really enjoy like talking with people on my team and really helping them to identify what their problems are. And like, I get a real buzz out of that conversation. That says to me, you're probably good at that then. So that can be another way of just sort of accessing some of it. The other thing you can do is just think about a feeling. So what does it feel like? And just imagine what it feels like to be doing something that you're good at. And then actually just start looking for those feelings when you're at work or when you're outside of work. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it if you struggle to kind of actually sit down and assess it in one.
That's a great, yeah.
Oh, did you lose me for a second?
Oh, you're back. Live, the joy of
being live.
Sorry. Yeah, that's all right. I think we had most of your tips, so it's all good. And I know I've interrupted your flow, so by all means, please let me know if you've got any other recommendations to help women on that path.
I think the other thing I would say that I talk about a lot is I'm not a big fan of the kind of fake it till you make it, forcing you into a situation. I think it's good to stretch yourself, and I think it's really good to it's really important that we're kind of stretching and we're taking these steps to get us into the next level. But if you're somebody who hates doing presentations and who really struggles, and actually being able to do presentations is something that might be really valuable for you, forcing yourself to do a presentation to 30 people is not going to help you. It's really not. There might be the odd person who actually can manage to do that, but what that's going to do is it's going to put you in a high stress response state. You're going to hate it. You're not going to have a nice time, and you're not going to want to do it again. So what are the smaller steps you can take to build yourself up to getting there over time? Don't just force yourself into something where you're going to feel really, really uncomfortable, because it's not a nice experience for anybody. It's not the level of stress that you need. And there's ways to manage it. Again, I'm all about like, how do you build, if you imagine like, where are my hands? If you imagine that you're here and you want to get to here, and it's a really big leap and it's bigger than your legs can kind of travel. If you try and make that leap, the likelihood is that you're just going to fall down in the middle. What you want to do is you want to make little stepping points. And it's okay that each stepping point is a bit of a stretch. We don't want to be doing tiny little ones. Each one can stretch you, but also it needs to be enough that you stretch and then you land safely so that you can keep moving forward. If you try and do that big leap at once, you might end up falling down, and then you're like, okay, well, now I've got to go back to the beginning and do I even want to? Does it make me more stressed? So yeah, not really here for the sort of forcing you to fake it till you make it kind of advice. It doesn't work for me.
No, and I think that's a great one, right? I think it's one of those that has worked for like companies of the Silicon Valleys and stuff, but when you apply it at an individual level, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think what's interesting, two things. First of all, for anyone who's listening in, let us know in the comments, if you're watching the replay as well, what would you say would be a good first step for you to actually make that happen as well? Like you, I'm like, where's my scale? That's it. What would be a good first step? Because I think, Lauren, you're just spot on that. And also, I'm curious to have your views, because to me, it's also about not feeling like it's coming on your shoulders to carry everything. Like, make sure that you've got a certain level of accountability, like making sure that as you identifying the things that you want to be doing, speak up about it, not in the sense of like being visible about those things just yet, but speak up about it in the sense of potentially having a friend that you can speak with, or, sharing the story with like a colleague that is very supportive of helping you moving forward as well. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think verbalizing where we want to go and talking about that is really important. I think there are some scenarios where maybe it's, you want to kind of hold something until you know what it is. But I think when there's resistance to it, it's like, are you resisting telling people you've got a goal because you don't want to sound like you're being too audacious, and you don't want to end up with that "who does she think she is" thing? Because if it's that, then I would definitely encourage you to start talking about it with other women who understand and who will be supportive and who will help you. And if you've also got other women around that you see who do some of these things well, that you want to learn from, and you want to connect with other women in your organization who seem to find some of those aspects of visibility or talking about the strengths or being seen in that way, that they seem like they find it easier than you do. It doesn't always mean that it's true. But what can you learn from them as well?
That's true. I was just thinking, based on what you said here, even, for example, personally from experience being here with you today, it was a stretch of my comfort zone of being visible, as in showing up for a first live ever. I'm very glad that we're doing this together, by the way, because you definitely were one of those women who was like, okay, I can take some inspiration from her to, get out there. So sometimes it's about making sure that you go beyond the appearances as well, and potentially one thing that it's really hard for me to crack personally with my clients, with the people I speak with, like it's really something I'm keen to pick your brain on, is it's so easy to get stuck in your own head with your own narrative about either like I can't make it, or it's too much of a stretch, or whatever that is happening. So do you have any thoughts and recommendations when we're just getting stuck in our own head in our own way and preventing ourselves to, grow and move forward?
I mean, I definitely think this is where having that sort of bigger purpose piece can be really helpful. I think to your point around doing this sort of work, I have had to go through my own journey of being able to be seen and heard in the kind of environments that I am, and I found that quite difficult when I started my own business. But actually, what I'm very much connected to is, if all I do is just help some women to navigate some of this stuff, that's a really good thing. And so how can I keep doing it in a way that works for me? And I think that's the other thing, is like, okay, what works for me? How do I make it possible? I think the other things are, exploring where do these blocks come from, I think it's really good to start building like the habits that help you to navigate around them. But actually, like, what is it? Like, is this is a thing that a teacher told you about your abilities, you know, at a young age? Or is this about, you did a presentation at school and it went badly and everyone laughed at you? Is this about, you know, you got picked on at school for being really smart? Like, where actually, like, can you identify a little bit of the root? Because sometimes just acknowledging, okay, that's a really old thing, that's not my current reality, can just help you to get a little bit of that perspective of, okay, am I stuck now because I'm genuinely concerned now, or am I stuck? Am I kind of, is old me a bit stuck with this? And does that, you know, sometimes that helps to take a little bit of its power away if you recognize, oh, that's not something that's actually going on for me right now. And I definitely, like I say, I think it's really, how can you bring in as many of the things that make you feel comfortable as possible? You know, like almost kind of, what are your comfort blankets?
Yeah.
Around this sort of thing, you know. So like, I love having conversations like this where I can just chat to somebody else who feels passionately about this kind of thing, and I don't have a script because we're talking about things that I know about and that I really care about. For some people, that's an absolute worst nightmare. So what is it? You know, are you somebody who's like, actually, do you know what, if we use LinkedIn as an example, actually, do you know what, I've got loads of things that I can offer and I really like to get deep into content. So like, how can you be writing long form content? How can you be utilizing that? And again, because the more you're using things that work for you, the more likely you are to be able to sustain it, you know. And I think the other thing, and I know that this will be something that will come up for women that you work with, is like, remember that you're not alone. Like, the more you can talk to other people about this, you get this sense of, oh no, it's not just me. Actually, we're all navigating this. And again, that can help. Like, how do you kind of bring in a community around you that can help buoy you up and take you forward? And you know what, like, if you're struggling, get a professional in, you know, work with someone like you, work with someone like me. There's a whole bunch of us who do all of this kind of work. Like, we're here because we know how to help you get through this, actually, in a really practical way. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying, actually, I need some support that works for me. And because we can't always do it ourselves. This is another thing. Women feel like we have to do it all by ourselves, and actually we don't.
Very true.
You know, so that's kind of what we're here for.
Ooh, so many valuable, priceless tips. Don't get me wrong, I've been listening to you, but I also got stuck on that whole like comfort blanket. Like, I love that because I'm talking all the time, you know, about you're in your comfort zone. Okay, let me just get it up now. You're in your comfort zone and there is the panic zone on that other side. And oh my God, I don't want to go there. But you can go into your stretch zone, which is where the magic happens because you grow, but you can actually grab your blanket with you. So this is good. I'm stealing this away from you.
Have it. Yes. My gift to you. That's exactly it. Yeah, the stretch is good, but like, you can still, bring some of the things that help you feel a little bit comfortable, that just make it easier. The other thing I also say, this is a really like basic level piece of advice, but if you're in a moment where you're starting to go into like, oh, I don't like it, take 3 slow, deep breaths and just give your brain a moment to catch up. And sometimes that can be enough when you're, like you say, when you're kind of getting in your head, or you're feeling like, oh my God, I can't do it, and you start to go a little bit into that panic zone. Just take some nice slow deep breaths, and that can help you to just shift out of that a little bit, gives you a little bit of space, allows your brain to kind of start engaging and go, actually, can I do this? I've done it before. I know how to do this. Okay, yeah, no, I can do it.
Love that. That's so good. Conscious of time, we only have a few minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. Any final tips or thoughts that you want to share on the topic?
My first one is like if you've got worries about all of this stuff being hard, you are by no means alone. So, you know, really, this is very much something that affects a huge number of women. You are not weird. It's not strange. It's not lame. All of these are words that I hear on a regular basis. 2, it's absolutely possible to become more comfortable with this kind of thing, with the right level of, with the right kind of time, with the right patience, with the right practice. And 3, you absolutely deserve to be able to say what you have achieved, what your dreams are, what your strengths are. You deserve to be able to articulate those out loud to whoever needs to hear it in whatever way they need to hear it. because you deserve to get to whatever that mission, purpose thing is. You are no less deserving of that than anybody else. And just, yeah, I want there to be more women who get there and who get that stuff. So yeah, you're not taking anything away from anyone else by saying this stuff. You deserve it all.
Oh, such a great way to finish. And for anyone obviously who need that extra push, follow Lauren. I'll make sure that I include your detail as well along with the video underneath. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for such priceless tips.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.